Foot binding has officially been banned in China for over 100 years. The practice involved the binding of the feet of young girls to prevent further growth. The idea was to create a more beautiful foot, and it was seen as something of a status symbol for women. Well, the practice did not die out immediately, and many women are still having to live with the physical and emotional consequences today. Their stories have now been chronicled in a new book by the Hong Kong-based photographer Jo Farrell. Jo, thank you for joining us. An incredible history there through your photographs. Why did you choose to photograph this in particular, this subject matter?
I started photographing about traditions and cultures that are dying out about 10 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to focus on women's traditions and cultures that were being eradicated, and so was looking into China and first of all looked to see if there was any women around with bound feet, and that's how the project started.
What did you find on your journey there?
Most of all, people said that there was no survivors left that had bound feet, that it was something that had died out so many years ago. But after talking to many people, I eventually found somebody who, his grandmother had bound feet. And so I went to her village, and after that, I found multiple other women.
Were you surprised at your reaction to the damage, if you like, caused by this tradition of foot binding to the women that are now in their 70s?
Most of the women I've actually documented are now in their 80s and 90s. The first woman I came across in 2005, Zhang Yongying, she had her foot and she put it in my hand, and her foot was so soft and well formed in the shape of a bound foot that it was actually quite beautiful in a lot of ways, and it made me realize how much pain and suffering she had been through to be aesthetically pleasing and to find a partner. Something that we do, you know, every day in every society, even in the UK, that people will change, they'll have body modification to make themselves more aesthetically pleasing.
Sure, and I read though, Jo, that through this period of documenting and speaking to these women, there was a sense of empowerment on their part, that they felt that this was an opportunity for them to change their social status. Is that right?
Completely. That in the time that foot binding was actually done, that the only way that you could marry into a better family, or in the case of the women I have been documenting, to a family that had more land or more sheep, that you had to have your foot bound, that it was essential, it was requested by the matchmaker and the future mother-in-law.
And where did the tradition start from, Jo?
There are many tales about how foot binding started, but the one that most people believe is that there was an emperor in the Shang dynasty who had seen a courtesan dancing on lily pads with her feet bound and thought that she was so beautiful that other courtesans decided to bind their feet to gain favor from the emperor.
How much of a mobility problem has foot binding caused for these women that are now in their 80s and 90s?
These women are actually, they work in the fields most of the time. They are walking around, they mainly walk on their heels. You know, it hasn't inhibited them at all.
Jo, we're grateful for you talking to us, and thank you very much for sharing your pictures with us. It's fascinating to get an insight into this age-old tradition and to also see the faces of those women there. Jo Farrell there, a photographer based in Hong Kong, taking pictures of the women who have been affected by foot binding in China.